I've just got back into training after having 2 weeks off completely. Didn't do anything slightly related to what I do as a job for 2 weeks. Just completely didn't go to the gym, didn't pick up a cricket bat, didn't bowl a ball, didn't even like think about training until a couple of days before I was back in training. Whereas when I was a lot younger, it was just constant. Like I didn't really have or give myself enough time away from what I do. I just didn't give myself that like break to refuel and get to let the body rest, which is what I find I can do really well now. Is I give myself like a period of time, but not enough time where I feel like I've got to be playing catch up. Like 2 weeks for me is like perfect, but in that 2 weeks, as I said, like just completely just switched off from the whole sport. Did after school club drop-offs, pickups, all that kind of stuff, like just not worried about or thinking about what I do pretty much 10 months of the year. Well, for me personally, it was clinical psychologist over a sports psychologist. A clinical psychologist is obviously completely different because sports psychologist is sort of performance related. That's where their professionalism is, as they understand the psych around sports and stuff like that. Whereas clinical is just complete. It's just life, and just to be able to speak to someone who can not relate to you, but almost have an answer for you and give you coping mechanisms with just certain things. Like at the time, I was my anxiety was just incredibly high. I'd never felt like that before, so I could tell him what situations that I was getting anxious in, and he was able to explain why I was feeling like that, and then was able to give me coping mechanisms to deal with that. And just in terms of just how low I was feeling in myself away from the anxiety part, again, he was able to explain why, because of everything that goes on in your brain. It's just good to actually know that this guy actually knows what he's talking about here, and actually leave after speaking to him feeling good and knowing that, right, okay, I'm going to go away and do these things and just have a better understanding of it all. So yeah, it was very beneficial, and I don't speak to him as often as I do, but I know that he's there if I ever feel like I need to just sort of reach out and get back in contact with him. When I was speaking to the doc more often before I decided to come back to play again, doesn't mean that, I'm back playing again now, I don't need to speak to anyone, like now I'm all sorted. That's not the case at all. It's always an ongoing process with lots of things, and I guess that can sort of lead on to other things as well, like just the stuff that happened in my personal life. Just because it's ended doesn't mean that that's the end of it. It's always going to be ongoing. It's always going to be part of your life. Like Bristol's always going to be part of my life. Just like dealing with, making sure that I look after myself and my mental well-being is always going to be part of my life going forward, because actually going through what I went through gave me a huge understanding as to as important physical fitness is to my job, that my mental health is important to me in just my day-to-day life. I remember when we were doing some filming and one of the Whisper crew pulled their phone out and said, "Oh, look what we've just got through." It was the interview with Warne. I had no idea that he'd said he was going to give an interview for it, but I worked with Warne at Rajasthan, and even before that, sort of just built a relationship with him with his commentary gigs that he was doing with Sky. And the great thing about Warne is he's going to go down as one of the greats of the game. It's not too often that you can say that about one of the greatest players still absolutely loves the sport when they're retired and when they're older. But he was an absolute cricket badger. He loved the sport, and when he was at Rajasthan, not only did he give a lot of time to the more senior players, but away from that, you would then see him on the side working with someone who had been asked to come in and be a net bowler. Like an Indian net bowler would say, "Oh, what do you think about this?" And then he'd still be there teaching him stuff half an hour later. So it's not a case of he just goes and works with the big dogs. He also just loves giving his time to aspiring young cricketers. Warne is I would have loved to play with Shane, because I think we're pretty much on the same wavelength about sport, about what can we do to win the game. Yeah, obviously very very sad news to hear when we heard that he passed away. But when I was training at Rajasthan, you know, I'm a lot different now because I'm a lot older then. I don't train anywhere near as hard as I used to because I physically can't, because I need to make sure that I can get out on the field. But yeah, Warne was a great man. I mean, it's hard to look past Freddie, isn't it? I mean, obviously being an all-rounder, like, always get asked Flint off, both of them, like, were they your idols and stuff like that? And honestly, I didn't really have a cricket idol. I just loved watching cricket. But the first person who I was almost like, oh, I loved watching them play was Herschel Gibbs, which just because he was almost ahead of his time. You know, he got on with batting, like he was really attacking in the era that he played in, and he was awesome to watch in the field. But everyone thinks that because I'm an all-rounder that, you know, both him and Freddie were my heroes, but I didn't really have any heroes in terms of cricket growing up, just like watching it. Yeah, I think it's just natural when you're playing an Ashes series, is that you know that there's, it sounds silly because every time you walk out on the field with an England shirt on, you're with immense pride, but there's just something different when you walk out onto the field in an Ashes series against Australia. Don't know what it is, but every Australian and every Englishman who's played in an Ashes Test match will say the exact same thing. There's just something more on it. It's obviously the history of the Ashes, the history of England, the Australia. Yeah, there's just something more to it, and yeah, when you've got an Aussie running in it, yeah, or you're running it an Aussie batter, it's just something different. When I'm batting, I don't really pay too much attention to it unless it needs addressed. Because as a batter, I always feel like you never win. Like, you could get 150 and then you get out. So like, if you're the fielder giving someone a bit of jip, and then he gets out, even if he's 150, you're like, ah, yeah, I won that. So personally, that's why I don't really say that much when I'm batting. Even when I got hit in the helmet, there was a little bit going on, but I just didn't say anything back because I was like, what's the point? I think it's just quite natural for me to be just sort of like externally chilled, because I feel like it's easy when you've been out in the middle for a while and you've been in the environment and the situation for a while, you're in, like. But when you first come out to bat, that's obviously the most pressure you're under, because you're like walking out, crowd's going wild, you've not faced the ball, you sort of adrenaline's pumping. So I almost feel like, right, if I'm out there and a new batter's coming in, just be chilled, just like, don't make a big deal of it, don't like overdo the situation, don't make it seem bigger than what it is.